There are lots of famous Jamaican dishes. There's jerk chicken, rice and peas, curry goat, and probably lots of other ones that you're familiar with if you're already a fan of Jamaican cooking. But what about rundown? If you've never heard of it, let me change your life right now. Rundown is basically a thick coconut cream sauce that's made by reducing and seasoning coconut milk. You literally boil it down or run it down until you have a rich custard and coconut oil. It's also called dip and fall back because it would traditionally be served in the middle of the table for each person to dip something starchy into it and then fall back. Rundown is most famously served with pickled mackerel, which, by the way, is delicious. Today we're going to use shrimp though. I also love to make it with chicken, fish, and even as a base for my creamed kale. Once you get the sauce down, you can get really creative with how you'll use it. In case there are any purists out there, let me first say that this is my version of rundown. A traditional recipe might be a little bit different, but this is how I like it. And before you begin, you really need to decide how much time you want to spend making this dish. You can either start with your own homemade coconut milk that you've already reduced, or you can use coconut milk from the can. If you use your own coconut milk, it'll produce an unmistakable flavor, but it'll also make you take a few hours longer. So the choice is yours, and I will not judge you either way. But while you think about that, I'm gonna get started on the shrimp. We're going to sear it off so that we can benefit from all the flavor that will develop in the pan. Now let's season the shrimp. We're going to use about a teaspoon of salt, a couple pinches of black pepper, a couple pinches of granulated garlic, or one big pinch, and one big pinch of powdered onion, and one tiny pinch of allspice. And last, the secret ingredient, baking soda. This helps the shrimp stay nice and plump and juicy versus tough and rubbery. Just make sure you check the recipe because if you add too much, it might impart a soapy flavor. We're using about 1/4 teaspoon for this pound of shrimp. And now just mix everything up to make sure it's thoroughly coated. All right, so heat a pan. This one's already pretty hot, and add a thin layer of coconut oil. Remember, shrimp cook really quickly, so we want to get them all in as evenly as possible, with a little help. And spread them out into an even layer. And remember, we're not cooking these all the way through. We're just looking to develop some color, some flavor, and they'll finish cooking up in the sauce once it's all finished. Don't want to disturb it too much, even if you're tempted. And by the time we get them all flipped, it is good to come out. And that's literally it. All right, we are going to just scoop out the shrimp and leave the oil because that's what we're going to cook everything else in, and it's going to be delicious. In the same pan, we're going to add our onion, garlic, thyme, and scotch bonnet peppers. This combination, plus scallions, which we'll get to later, is classic for Jamaican food. You start combining these flavors and it's going to immediately smell like a Jamaican kitchen. All right, now let's add some salt and pepper. The salt will help break down the onions, making them softer. There are lots of layers to this dish, so we're going to season as we go to make sure all of the flavors are properly developed. This is going to be a very coconutty dish. Not only are we sautéing in raw coconut oil, and we're adding in the coconut milk later, but then we're going to top the finished dish with crunchy coconut flakes and serve it alongside coconut rice. I bet that sounds like a lot. When we used to serve this dish at our bed and breakfast in Jamaica, we heard multiple times from folks who said that they didn't like coconut, that they loved this dish. And that's because most people's experience with coconut is sweet, stringy, and just one note in flavor. This dish, even if you're using the canned coconut milk, is savory and multifaceted. Great, so now that our onions are translucent, we're going to add our reduced coconut milk. If you're using your own homemade coconut milk that you've already reduced, then you're basically already there. See how thick it is? But if you're using coconut milk from the can, then you'll need some more time to get it this thick, so just keep reducing it. Just make sure that in either case, you're not bringing it above a low simmer, because if you take it up to a rolling boil, you might actually break the coconut milk and it'll look curdled and lumpy, and you don't want that. This sauce is nice and thick, so let's taste it and check the seasoning. We probably need to add a little salt and pepper. Really good, but let's add a little bit. And some pepper. Now, even though we haven't done much to this coconut milk, it's already completely transformed, but we're not gonna stop here. Now's the time to add whatever vegetables you want. Keep in mind taste, of course, but also texture to make it interesting. I'm going to add zucchini, yellow squash, red pepper, and carrots. Season with salt and pepper and let it cook uncovered at a low simmer, still not a boil. Once the vegetables have softened to your liking, we're gonna finish the whole thing off with some tomatoes and some scallions. Add them right in. And of course, since we're adding another layer, we need to season again. And the point isn't just, add salt for the sake of adding salt, but really to keep tasting and making sure that we're staying on track. All right, this is perfect. We're done. I wish you guys could smell this. The coconut is so fragrant. All of the vegetables have combined and gotten perfectly tender. Let's add in our shrimp and turn off the stove. All right, and the heat of the sauce, since it's still piping hot, is going to continue to cook the shrimp. So if any of them needed a couple more moments, they're gonna get it right now. Look at that. Oh my gosh, I can't wait to eat this. And you can see the sauce has actually turned a slight shade of pink because of not only the peppers, but the tomatoes and all the different vegetables have released their juices, and it's just amazing. You guys, this is so good, and I know because I've tasted about 5 times throughout this process, I could seriously eat it straight out the pot, but let's plate it up and be civilized. And now we're gonna top it off with some coconut flakes that are crunchy and crispy and a little bit salty to add that last bite. This is so good. I cannot wait to eat it. So good. And because we did that secret trick with the baking soda, the shrimp stayed nice and plump and tender. And the sauce has so many layers. It's incredible. You guys have got to make this at home. It's unlike anything that you've ever tasted, I promise you.